All right. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. No, Tuesday. Oh, Tuesday, right? That's right. It's Tuesday. We just celebrated, in honor of Martin Luther King. So I hope that I know some of you were out there working, but I hope that you all took a moment to appreciate the contribution that he made, within his life and the work that is still left to be done as well. So just really glad that we were able to kind of take that day. But I know I talked to some of you guys yesterday, and I know we got started really early with our 6:30 a.m. mastermind. I got a chance to see a couple of you guys on Sunday for those of you that are doing the 12-week year mastermind, right? And kind of really condensing what most people look at doing in a year in that 12-week period. So however you got your week off to the start, I hope you guys all had a very, very powerful start to your week. So we're going to jump into our market update. There's going to be a couple things that I want us to take into consideration that I'm going to point out, especially when we start looking at the showing time data. So let me go ahead and throw my screen on really quickly for us. Here we go. All right. All right. Thumbs up if you can see the screen share. Okay, awesome. Perfect. Thank you. All right. So we're going to jump right into our market up. Whoop, already slipping a couple slides. I'm going to keep a couple things here. So we just got into the new year. I want to review, right? I want to do a quick review on here because I think that this is really important when we're looking at showing time data. And what you're going to see is one of the things that is really important this time around as we're reviewing some of this showing time data is when we look at 2019. So 2019 is our blue line, right? We see a pretty significant standard. So we have our baseline here at 0. So this is where we start the year off, right? Each year. Now, we've got a baseline that was 2019, which was a typical market, right? That was a typical market. So you can see that there's little bits of dips and valleys, right? Again, it kind of coincides with some of the dips that we see up here in 2020, except the dips and valleys were not as significant, right? So this is the data of weekly showings that we look at a 7-day average as we go through the year. Now, what's going to be really interesting is we can see as well when we started looking at 2020 data, which is going to be this yellow line here, right? Here's the thing about 2020. 2020 is all over the place. We've got dips, right? When we experienced the shutdown here in March, we've got these increases, and instead of recovery, so what we had anticipated it kind of going along, if we were looking at the beginning part of January, we see a major increase that was due to factors like extremely low interest rates, the pent up demand from when we had that pause during the pandemic, limited inventory, which means that buyers are seeing more properties than they would in a normal market, and also more requests for showings going virtual through the Showing Time app. So we know that it's taken a couple years of adoption on this. So that's where we saw these really major increases. The thing is as we go into 2021 and we start looking at the 2021 data, we no longer have what we would consider like an average baseline, right? Because 2019 is more of that baseline. 2020 was a little bit of the anomaly that comes when we look at a pandemic. And we can see that right at the end of the year, as we started experiencing the holidays, we saw some major dips. This is right over here for Thanksgiving, right? We saw a major dip. And then right at the end of the year, we saw it start to go down. And then we saw a major decrease that was right over here for Christmas and another drop for the New Year's. So as we start looking at 2021, you're going to see that we are using both of these lines, the 2019 data and the 2020 data, as kind of that baseline for us. So you could see the only addition we have here. So we're changing colors a little bit, right? We're changing colors a little bit. We've got this light blue baseline, which is going to be 2019. We've got this kind of, you know, significant craziness that we got over here, which was our crazy 2020. And then we're going to have this nice new blue line that's getting us started. I'm sorry, the yellow line that's getting us started for 2021. So we can see that starting at our base for January, we saw a little bit of an increase, right? A little bit of an increase, but that's not anything super significant yet. So we're going to want to continue to kind of watch this and see if we're going to hit a year that's a little bit more similar to what we saw in 2019, or if we're still going to have some of these significant peaks and valleys. And of course, as we start watching this data, watch what happens from a standpoint of what's happening in the world, right? Because where we see dips and valleys, of course, we see a lot of that on holiday weekends, right? We're obviously going to see a lot of that when we're experiencing a holiday. But where we also will see a lot of these different peaks and valleys is just going to be around when there's any type of additional or more stringent shutdowns. As right now we're kind of going into this season of people actually getting the vaccine, we may see showings continue to rise. So we're going to keep watching this, but I just wanted to kind of go over that with you guys because this is the first week that we're now starting to look at 2019, 2020, and 2021 averages across the board as we start looking at this showing time data. Now let's get right into our pricing trends. Los Angeles County, right? Los Angeles County. So we've seen, we had seen this kind of trend where the past week or so we saw a little bit of a price increase in our new inventory coming onto the market. That's going to be, it's not super significant right here. You could see that red line, right? For the past 3 weeks seems kind of stable, right? Over here at the 700,000 mark. And yet, if we're looking at the 12 to 24 weeks prior, which is going to be this group right over here, and compared to the last 12 weeks, we still see a small price difference of 0.2% of a decrease right across the board here. So that's just one of the things we want to keep in mind. Overall, under contract pricing for the last week has been at about 675, right? 675,000. We're seeing that our sold inventory in Los Angeles County specifically is at 673,000, and new inventory in Los Angeles County is at about 700K. Again, when we look at these trends, under contract is up 1.3%. That accounts for about a little bit over $8,000 difference when we're looking at the last 12 weeks versus the 12 to 24 weeks prior. In our sold, right, we're up 0.7%. That's about 4.4 thousand, right, that we're looking at. And then new inventory being down, that's a difference of about 1,000. So it's not going to be super significant. And yet we always want to keep in mind, as we see this trend right here, as we're seeing this little bit of recovery, we may see this trend start to kind of even out a little bit, right? It's still pretty even across the board, but we're going to want to continue to watch this to see if it starts adjusting this trend instead of going down, if we start seeing it to kind of stabilize, or if we start seeing those prices go up again, which we could see because we want to look at this, what we started looking at in inventory. So if you guys remember last week when we started looking at inventory in Los Angeles County, the bar that is most important when we're looking at the LA County inventory trends and we're looking at inventory trends across the board is the red bar, right? Our red bar accounts for new inventory. Now we've been watching this for quite a while, and we've seen that almost across the board in all 4 counties, starting either September 28th or October 5th, right? Depending on the county, 2 counties, we see it starting September 28th. We saw that was the peak of inventory. And then we saw a decrease, right? A decrease, a major decrease. But again, this is a holiday week, right? So we experience recovery. So if we were to hold a straight line, we know this is a little bit of an anomaly, but still from November 16th to November 30th, that's still a decrease, right? Again, another decrease in the first week of December, another decrease the second week of December. And then again, holiday weeks, right? Holiday weeks, we tend to see a little bit more significant decrease. So we see that decrease here and then recovery in the very last week of December. Now, here's what we saw. First week of the new year, we saw a jump. Why? Because that's where all of a sudden we start getting those appointments with clients that are saying, hey, I think I wanted to wait till the new year. Guess what? They started raising their hands. Those that were like, you know what? No, I want to list the first week of January. That's this jump that we had. And this is a pretty significant jump. In fact, we hit levels that were close to what we saw at the very end of November, right? At the very end of November. Now, what we wanted to continue watching is that going to be a trend? Or are we going to see it drop again, right? Is that just going to be something that happens for the new year? So I want you to pay attention to this past week because we saw increases. We saw increases in inventory across all three categories. So under contract, there was 1,009 homes that sold that were under contract in Los Angeles County last week. 993 homes that sold. That's not going to be a significant change. You can see that this green bar has been pretty steady, right? In terms of the properties that are selling, we see that's pretty steady across the last couple of weeks. And then new inventory, still higher, right? Still higher than what we started getting towards the end of the year. In fact, we're probably really similar to what we were around the first to second week of December. And yet, you know, so we're not seeing that it's a continual drop. We are seeing a little bit of an increase, but not as significant of an increase as we saw in the first week of the year. So this is going to be just really important for us to keep an eye on. We're going to want to watch these inventory trends across the board, right? We're going to want to continue to watch these inventory trends across the board. As we're looking at it, we are still down in inventory, right? We're still down in inventory. But as we start looking at the last 12 weeks compared to the 12 to 24 weeks prior, a couple things that I want you to know. We've seen a decrease week over week of about 215 homes under contract. That's a decrease of 17.6%, right? We've seen a decrease in sold properties. So this is where I want you guys to have clarity. Even though we see this number going down, right? And it's about a 0.2% decrease, right? Even though we see this number down about 0.2% increase, this is what's important. That's really only a difference of about 3 properties every week, right? So that's not super significant. What does that mean? That means we still have a pretty steady amount of homes that are selling week over week, and yet the inventory is down so significantly, right? And so that's where we experience a little bit of that challenge. Our inventory being down 33%, that's an impact of 532 homes week over week, right? So that's going to be a bit more significant when we start looking at new inventory. Keep an eye on these trends as we start looking at the other 3 counties. So jumping into Orange County, we know Orange County, we have a higher price point. Unlike Los Angeles County, where we saw a little bit of these prices drop, we are up all across the board in Orange County. And we can kind of see that over here as well with the trends. Under contract dipped slightly just week over week, but that's not super significant if we look at the trends across the board. Under contract pricing in Orange County, our median under contract price last week was $829,000. Median sold price was $805,000, and median for new inventory that's hitting the market is at about $800,000. Right. So keep an eye on that. Not too significant when we are looking at an under contract price, though. I want you to keep in mind. So higher the price, the percentages are larger, right? So the higher the price, when we start looking at these percentages, they make a bigger impact. So a higher percentage is going to account for either a higher number as we look at the inventory, or it's going to account for a higher number from a price perspective. Under contract is up 2.2%. That means that in the last 12 weeks, we've seen about a price increase of about $17,000 compared to the 12 to 24 weeks prior. As we're looking at our sold inventory, that's about a 0.7 increase. That's about 5,400, almost 5,500, right? A price difference in the last 12 weeks versus the 12 to 24 weeks prior. And then last but not least, in our new inventory, right? New inventory, 0.2% increase. That's about 1,400, right? A little bit more than 1,400. As we're looking at that price increase overall, what does that mean? We're not seeing a significant price increase in new inventory that's hitting the market. As you're taking listings, as you're meeting with your clients, do not overprice, right? Do not overprice because it's not going to support it. Where it's supporting the price increase is when people are actually getting into the bidding wars and we're seeing that bigger price increase on the under contract difference than we are in new pricing, right? Than we are on the new inventory that's hitting the market. So really important there. Looking at, sorry guys, I skipped one ahead. Looking at Orange County inventory trends, right? Inventory trends. So again, just like LA County, we saw, so as of, just really quickly, as of September 28th, we started seeing that dip. Of course, we had the major dips right around here in the holidays. And then we saw that increase the first week of January. Again, not a major increase in that second week of January. And yet we are seeing that there's going to be a little bit of a dip week over week. And yet it's still higher than we ended the year at in terms of our inventory. 589 properties went under contract in Orange County last week. 577 properties sold and 589 properties hit the market in Orange County last week. We know Orange County has a little bit less dense than Los Angeles County. That's why we're looking at smaller numbers and also higher price point, right? So again, though, new inventory is down the most significant. In Orange County, we're seeing a 39.6% difference across the board. That's about 366 properties week over week. So that's still pretty significant. You know, we really need to be looking at, you know, with your clients, talk to your sellers, make sure that you're talking to them about where the price is at, that they can still get top dollar, that we are still in a seller's market, right? We're definitely still in a seller's market. It's competitive for our buyers right now. And yet we need more of that inventory hitting the market as well. Riverside County, we've seen slight price increases across the board. Although Riverside County is a lower price point than when we're looking at LA and Orange County. Our median under contract price point in Riverside County, $432,000, right? $432,000. Our median sold price, $450,000, and median for new inventory hitting the market, $440,000. Now, again, the lower the price is, right, then when we're looking at the percentages, sometimes they'll make up for smaller amounts. Under contract, 1.9% increase. That's a little bit more than $8,000, right, of a difference in the last 12 weeks compared to the 12 to 24 weeks prior. For sold inventory, however, because we know what happens is that prices have been getting worked up. So we see that when the homes are sold, about a 3.9% increase. That accounts for just under $17,000 difference, right? Just under a $17,000 difference, meaning that homes are selling for about $17,000 more in the last 12 weeks than they are in the 12 to 24 weeks prior. And then last but not least, new inventory pricing, 0.2% increase. That's about $753. Again, across the board in new inventory, these price increases or price drops are not significant, right? They're not significant, which means we cannot be overpricing that inventory that is hitting when we're putting a listing on the market. We want to make sure that we are not overpricing, because these new prices right now, we've looked at 3 counties so far, right? And we're not seeing major increases here. So that's going to be really important. Now, let's look at Riverside County inventory. Again, we're seeing almost a very similar kind of trend across the board when we're looking at new inventory specifically. However, in Riverside County, what I want you guys to pay attention to is we did not experience a drop in the inventory week over week in Riverside County. We saw this shoot up, right, the first week of the month, and we saw another week that matched that and saw increases as well in our sold inventory. So under contract, there was 510 properties that went under contract in Riverside County within the last week, 534 properties that sold in Riverside County in the last week, and 543 properties that hit the market in Riverside County in the last week. Again, we're looking at a smaller county, right? We're looking at a smaller county. So unlike Los Angeles County, where the number is like in the thousands, right? Here, the number is significantly lower than that. And yet what we want to pay attention to here is the trends. Again, if we were looking at this from the perspective of inventory across the past few months, we see that where we started to see that trend downward in terms of our inventory, this started a week after what we saw in Los Angeles and Orange County. We saw that start about October 5th, right, is where we started to see that peak of the inventory. And then, of course, those drops, the more significant drops here for the holidays, and then a major increase in that first week of January and another week that's matched it. You need to, again, talk to your sellers, right? Talk to your sellers, because this is where we want to make sure that anybody that said they were waiting until the new year, right now is the time to get that inventory on the market. And as we can see from these numbers starting to go up, this is when the sellers are definitely starting to make those moves. Again, so now looking at San Bernardino pricing trends, right? We're looking into our last county right over here, looking at our price trends here as well. Give me, sorry guys, I skipped ahead one. Looking at our price trends here as well. So we want to take into account and give me, you know what, 1 second, guys, because I have the wrong trend for you guys right here. I'm going to go into the inventory on our San Bernardino County. And then what I'll do is I'll pull up the pricing trends for San Bernardino County. After I do know San Bernardino County, what we're looking at is going to be very significant to what we've seen in our Riverside County trends as well. So I'll pull that up for you guys. But in terms of our inventory trends, what we're seeing across the board, we had 438 properties under contract in San Bernardino within the last week. One of the things that's going to be significant for San Bernardino County, so sold inventory, 479 properties that sold in San Bernardino County in the last week. For new inventory, 524 homes that hit the market in San Bernardino County in the last week. This is where I want you to see the anomaly as we've gone across the different counties, where San Bernardino County is actually the outlier, right? San Bernardino County is our outlier. If we look at this red bar, so again, as we've been talking about, starting October 5th, we started seeing a decrease in inventory, which of course we saw the most significant decreases around the holidays, slight recovery, and then again, more significant decreases around the holidays. We saw an increase in inventory the first week of the year, which is to be expected, right? That's what we anticipate. Now, in Los Angeles County and in Orange County, we saw that inventory dipped a little bit again this week compared to the prior week. It's still higher than it was at the beginning of the year as we got out of those holidays, and yet we saw a little bit of that dip. In Riverside County, we saw that it's even, right? We saw that it's pretty even. Now, in our lowest price point county, San Bernardino, our lowest price point county, we see that inventory actually increased over the past week. We had more properties hit the market last week in San Bernardino County, right? A higher percentage increase, but we're seeing this inventory trend go up. So you guys know when we're looking at these numbers, a week, 2 weeks doesn't make a trend, right? We want to see if this is going to be consistent. And yet we always want to inspect what we're expecting. And we want to pay attention to anomalies like these, because this could mean that just based on this being one of our lower price counties, that more people are looking to sell. That could be there. So there could be a couple different factors that are playing into this. We never want to make assumptions about exactly what's happening. It could be that people are wanting to upgrade. It could be that there's more people that are experiencing in kind of some of these commuter counties. There could be, more people that are experiencing a difficulty, and now we have more homes that are hitting the market. So there's a lot of factors that can play into this, but I always want you to notice when we're seeing a trend across a couple different counties and all of a sudden that shifts, we want to pay attention to that, right? We want to pay attention to that. So we want to keep in mind if this is going to continue moving forward. A couple things to note on this. Across all 4 counties, we are not seeing significant price increases when we are looking at our pricing trends for new inventory, right? That's not going to be a majorly as significant increase on those pricing trends. That's important, right? That's going to be really important that we take into consideration because we want to make sure that we are not overpricing listings as we're getting those listings, because the trends in the market is not going to support it, right? The market data and what we're looking at is not going to support us overpricing. Where we see the most significant increases is where it's under contract, it's in properties that have actually sold. That's where we're seeing the biggest increase. That's because we're still in a situation where we're seeing a lot of multiple offers. So a couple things to keep in mind here. If you are representing buyers, it's still a competitive market. You can see those price differences as we start looking at the different counties, is where you're able to kind of see what that spread is from the list price to what it's actually going under contract at, and where you can see that as a multiple offer scenario, you're still having to kind of be really competitive. You're still having to bid. So make sure that you are talking to your clients about that, right? It's still an absolutely phenomenal time for a lot of clients to buy so that they can take advantage of these low interest rates. But we need to make sure that they understand that where the value comes in is in the fact that they're building equity over time. If they start getting really into just the price, right, then they're going to start psyching themselves out on purchasing. And we know that in reality, buying real estate and kind of increasing that equity over time and the opportunity they could have some really phenomenal opportunity that they're able to take advantage of right now. For our sellers, a couple things I want you to keep in mind. One, pricing. I'm going to say it again because it's so important. Do not overprice your listings, right? Do not put your clients in a position where they're not getting that same level of exposure. We know that in a multiple offer scenario, your seller has the upper hand because now they can pick and choose the terms from the various contracts that are going to be most important to them, right? That are going to be most important to them. And we know that as we go into higher price point markets, that's where things tend to sit on the market longer. So things move very quickly when we're looking at those bread and butter, lower price point properties. When we start getting into those higher price points, right? So for example, Orange County, we see smaller numbers as we're looking at sales on price differences, but we're in a higher price point, right? We're in a higher price point. And we know that as we start getting into those jumbo loans, those jumbo mortgages, now all of a sudden we're running into different challenges and sometimes less clients that are looking for those higher price properties. So do not overprice your properties as well. And make sure that right now you're taking advantage of this kind of January month and everybody wanting to get started for the new year, and that you're having those conversations with your clients as well, right? So make sure that you're talking about that. Now, a couple other things that I wanted to keep in mind. So we've been talking about the forbearance numbers, and I know, guys, we're a little bit over time again with it. So I'm going to go quickly. A couple of the things that we want to keep in mind. So we know the number of active forbearances declined slightly, right? Declined slightly in the past week. We know that the total number of active forbearances are down 1.5% from last month. So in January, we've seen a 1.5% decrease in active forbearances in comparison to what we were looking at in the month of December. This is going to be important for a couple different reasons, right? Forbearances, what we want to look at, because if you remember what we talked about last week, is even though we saw a dip, That doesn't necessarily mean that people are experiencing recovery. What we're seeing is some people are expiring out of their forbearances, right? Some people that took forbearances that were expiring at the end of December, they expire out. Now, those people may still be in the process of requesting extensions. They may be starting to look at their repayment options. They may be starting to look at what? Their options for selling, right? Some of them might be in a position where they're not going to be able to experience that same level of recovery. So we want to keep that in mind, right? We're going to want to keep that in mind. What we also saw is the decrease was countered by an increase in forbearances, specifically with FHA and VA loans, right? With FHA and VA loans. In fact, as we're looking at it, approximately 3.3% of all GSE backed loans are in forbearance. It's approximately, so I want you to see the difference here. It's approximately 9.4% of all FHA and VA loans are in active forbearance. Almost 10%, right? Almost 10% of people that are FHA or VA loans are currently in some type of active forbearance. And there's another 5.1% of loans that are in private label securities or bank portfolios that are also in forbearance. This is going to be really important data for us to keep an eye on as we're looking at what this means across the board for our forbearances. We know a couple things are going to, as of right now, so you guys know, we look at this every week because things may change from one week to the next. What we know to be true as of right now is that as of January 31st or as of February 1st, we are seeing the moratorium be lifted on foreclosures and the moratorium be lifted on evictions. That may change. So I always want to keep in mind anything that has to do with what's happening from a political standpoint, that may change. There could be some type of measure that gets passed that provides some type of extension. And yet what we know to be true is the forbearance program is designed to go no longer than a year, right? It's designed to go no longer than a year. It usually goes in 3 to 6 month increments. And we know that the majority of forbearance plans, the time frame where people started getting into these forbearance agreements was towards the end of March, right? So we want to start getting ahead of those conversations. Now, if you are not talking to your database, again, remember, the conversation doesn't have to be difficult. It doesn't have to be super aggressive where you're saying, hey, are you in forbearance, right? We don't want to use that. We want to use third-party scripting. We want to let them know, hey, wanted to call you, wish you an absolutely phenomenal new year. And I wanted to be a resource for you with any of your real estate needs. You know, one of the things that's really concerning me right now, right? One of the things that's really concerning me right now is the number of clients I have reaching out to me asking me about these forbearance, these mortgage forbearances, and these different eviction and foreclosure moratoriums be lifted. Are there any questions that you have that I might be able to answer or anything that I can help you with, right? We want to come from educating them and helping them through that process. For some of them, they may find that repayment is their best option, but you want to start identifying, if you have not already, who those clients are. Now, if you had these conversations a couple months ago, like we had been talking about, and you started reaching out to your clients, then right now is the time to check in, right? Right now is the time to check in, because your clients don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. You need to come from that contribution with them and see how you can be of service and how you're able to help them. That's going to be extremely, extremely important. So we want to just kind of keep an eye on that. One last thing that I wanted to make sure that I mentioned today. So thank you guys for going along with me today. The Zillow Idx, right? The Zillow Idx. For the past couple years, you have had the right, because we turned on a setting within the MLS, which gave you the opportunity to choose whether or not you want your property syndicated to sites like Zillow, Realtor, and Trulia, right? So there was a toggle that you have as you log into the MLS that we turned on at the brokerage level so that you could make that choice yourself. That is changing, right? That is changing, not by our choice, right? if it was up to us, we would make sure that you always had the right. If you wanted to exclude any listings or anything from Zillow, we wanted to give you that opportunity. Here's what happens. Zillow is now a brokerage. We've been talking about this transition for the last couple of years, back when Zillow was even saying they were never going to get into the real estate as a brokerage. And guess what? Here they are in real estate as a brokerage, right? What that means is that, like a brokerage, they become part of the Association of Realtors so that they can get access to the MLS. Now, traditionally, and this is where, for those of you that are our agents that are listening, I'm going to share the difference here, but I want to share the difference. In traditional real estate brokerage, when you have your real estate website or you have your real estate app or whatever it might be, you have what's called an IDX connection. What that is you subscribe to an MLS, and by subscribing to that MLS, you fill out an IDX paperwork to give your MLS the right to syndicate their listings to your website. And because of that, it's usually based on a subscriber by subscriber basis, except whatever IDX connections the brokerages have. We don't have that issue because of our acquisition of Smarter Agent about 4 years ago. You guys have every IDX in the nation is already set up. And that's why your clients are able to not just search for listings that are with CRMLS on your KW app or your KW website, but they're able to search for properties in Arizona, in Texas, and whatever other areas, whatever other MLSs as well. That's because we have all of those IDX connections already set up at the brokerage level. Now, Zillow was a syndication platform before, which means they did not have an IDX connection. What they had was a monetary agreement with the National Association of Realtors that allowed them to license the data. And so because they were an advertising partner, right, they paid all this money to be able to do that. Then we had the opportunity to toggle that switch on or toggle that switch off, because they're considered an internet platform instead of an MLS subscriber. That's changed. Now they will have IDX connection. So anything that any real estate agent gets access to through the MLS, Zillow will have access to, whether you turn that toggle on or off. So I want to make that clear, right? I just want to make that clear because we no longer have that same level of control as they go through this transition, right? Not always, the thing that is in our favor, because again, we know that Zillow is clearly, they've clearly kind of worked this long game on manipulating and getting access to the data. And now that is transitioning to a little bit more access that they'll have, but on a different level. But I really want to make that clear to all of you. I see on here, a quick question: will Zillow charge a fee to the clients since they will be a broker? So Zillow actually already charges a fee to clients. The way that it's worked out, and you guys, some of you will remember, that's a great question, Virginia. Thank you for asking that. Some of you will remember when we went over the Zillow terms and conditions, right? We know that for the past few years, Zillow has actually been acquiring properties. They have their Zillow Offers program where they buy properties cash, and they have been listing properties. Some of the things that there will be a little bit of a benefit. So we know that some of those properties that Zillow was listing, because they weren't an actual broker at the time, because they weren't actually a member of the National Association of Realtors, what happened? Those properties were not on the MLS. Those properties were just on the Zillow website. And if your client wanted to make an offer on any of those properties, they had their own Zillow terms and conditions that had some really interesting verbiage. If you guys remember, we went over those sheets in depth, but it had a couple really noticeable factors. One of those being an automatic contingency removal without actually signing a contingency removal. So we know the residential purchase agreement with CAR is designed to help protect your buyers. Zillow's terms and conditions are not. Now, Zillow has always charged fees when they do any type of purchase. They've just kind of hidden them, where they've not necessarily been like a commission. It's been like a servicing fee. And we know a couple things about those servicing fees. Those percentages have always been much significantly higher than what a client would probably pay if they were dealing with an actual agent. And yet it got hidden into the terms and conditions, right? So it's been a little bit misleading. That is likely going to change, right? What I anticipate is that we're going to see Zillow kind of come down the pipeline and start operating in a really similar manner to what we saw with Redfin, right? That's highly likely what we're going to see, at least initially, is going to be some type of operation like that. Now, in the long term, what we know is that in reality, Zillow itself has a much higher SEO. They're getting a lot more traffic than a site like Redfin, right? A ton more traffic. And so when we start looking and kind of comparing apples to apples in the sales aspect, we are going to see a pretty significant increase in Zillow sales. The other thing that I want to note, Zillow did not create new transactions, right? When Zillow launched and started selling leads, they didn't all of a sudden create a brand new market. All they did was capture a segment of the market that already existed. The difference is that before they captured a segment of the market and then they sold those leads back to the agents, right, for a referral fee or for a premier agent program or for whatever it might be, some type of ad spend. But we've known for years, and we've been talking about it for years, that their end goal was what? Well, the money is in two things. The money is a lot higher if they get a full agent commission, right, than if they just get that percentage. The money is also higher in resale value if they are selling properties that they're doing cash offers on. But the last thing is the data, right? Zillow also wants the data. There's a lot of value, the more information that they're able to capture. So that's really their long game. I do anticipate that they're going to focus on some of the hotter markets. So I think that we're going to see a lot more Zillow. We definitely will see it here in Los Angeles, right? LA County, we started already seeing Zillow offers. We've seen properties that we've looked at in these sessions in Temecula and these different areas. We're going to see increases when we start looking nationally, right? Some of the hot spots besides here in Los Angeles County, here in California, I would say areas in Arizona, right, are going to be big, in Texas and in Florida, right? Those are kind of some of the markets that are really similar to us, and we are a much hotter market. In fact, we know that a third of all real estate agents are where? In California, Texas, and Florida, right? So a lot more transactions in these areas, a lot higher price points. So we'll definitely see that. And we'll keep having this conversation, guys. You guys know that we're always going to talk about the market data, and we're also going to talk about what's happening in the industry and how that's going to impact you. Right now, I wanted you guys to be informed about exactly what's happening, because I know that as you guys are like, hey, my listing's not showing up on Zillow, or hey, my listing is on Zillow and I didn't want it to be, we no longer have that same level of control. So I want you guys to be clear that there may be things like that that are happening as Zillow kind of completes this transition process to an IDX. I'll post a couple articles on it and kind of guidelines. I know CAR released, or the National Association of Realtors also released some guidelines on it as well. It's going to be different as they go state by state. So if you're watching from anywhere else, just keep that in mind as well. But with that, I know that's a lot of information, you guys. I'm hoping that's helpful. I just want you guys to keep that in mind, right? So keep it in mind. I will make sure that I include the Zillow information, as well as the information from Black Knight's forbearance tracker, so that we can go over that data. And as soon as the new report is released for Black Knight, we will go into that in depth. I believe we're probably going to review that on next week's. It should be the November report that gets released. So, they're about a month to 2 months behind, but we still want to review those numbers because it starts giving us that anticipation of trends moving forward. So with that, we went over a lot today, guys, but I know it was a lot of information to cover, and that was some great question that we had as well. With that, I hope you guys have an absolutely phenomenal rest of your day. And I'll see you guys later.